Good afternoon and welcome to the Sunset Rewind podcast for boys volleyball. We are really fortunate to have two of the most successful and legendary volleyball coaches in Newport Mesa School District's history. We have Dan Glenn from Newport Harbor, who started at Huntington Beach in the 70s with a bunch of legendary volleyball coaches in his team, and then he grew up with, just talking volleyball. And then we have Steve Conti, who was a player on the Estancia teams in the early 80s that went to the CIF finals, and he is everywhere he's gone, he's won. Let me start with Dan, and just tell me a little of your brief volleyball history as you can see it from high school on.
From high school on, I played at Huntington Beach High School, so we had the opportunity to play Newport Harbor actually 3 times in league. And there was a very young Charlie Brande coaching at Newport Harbor, so we had some pretty exciting games. But I grew up with a number of people who continued and had an impact on volleyball in Southern California. And my teammates and my coaches and stuff like that, and people went to different places. Albert Gasparian over at Golden West College, Rocky Chiarelli, who I got to coach with at the end of his career at Newport Harbor and coached against for a number of years at when he was at Huntington High. Tom Pestalacci, who actually coached Coach Conti at Estancia High School, and he was another member. So there's just some fantastic people and role models I was around.
Well, as we know coaching pretty well, and Mike D'Alessandro was part of that group too. And he was a legend. He's legendary in another way.
I didn't know I was allowed to talk about Mike in this podcast. No, Mike has been my best friend growing up. Phenomenal player. Was my senior year in high school, was the athlete of the year at Huntington High. He was a starting quarterback, starting point guard, and the setter on our volleyball team. He coached at Long Beach State when they won a national championship. He was assistant there. He's helped Travis Turner over at Orange Coast College. Coached with a friend of mine, Charlie Brande, at UCI.
Yes, he
and
did.
So a number of places, but he's been very, very successful and kind of won wherever he's been.
Yeah, that's a great just a history. And then you guys played together for 4 decades after that. All, lots of indoor on the sand, Manhattan six-man, all that for years and years.
Because I ended up going to Orange Coast College, got to play with Steve Timmons and a number of other outstanding players who I played against in high school when he was at Newport Harbor. There was a number of outstanding people as far as going through the history of that.
Bob Wetzel was your coach, who was another famous coach in both basketball and volleyball.
Yes, and his brother, huge Estancia connection. So
Right.
that's the beauty of volleyball. There's just so many people that are connected in a certain way. So
When I bring like a new family in and to do clinics and whatever, and then they start seeing the interaction of all of us, they go, "You guys are all just like one big family." I go, "Welcome to volleyball."
And that's the special thing about the sport. And it's kind of like in this community, the water polo community is, in the sense that it's basically birthplace and where it has grown as a sport, especially on the boys' side and the girls' side also. Right. But just like water polo has. So you just have had a number of unique individuals in this area. They're both Southern California sports. And through competition, it's made everybody better.
Right.
Newport Harbor was as good as they were when I was coaching because Steve was over at CDM and how good they were. And we kind of fed off each other in that regard. And on the boys' side, the girls' side, all of that.
Right. You kind of had to always play your best because you knew the other school was going to be at their best.
Absolutely. And if you look on the boys' side right now, I think out of the last 10 years, the CIF championship game has had a member of the Sunset League in it.
Right.
So,
right.
And most of the time, the champion.
Yeah, pretty good. Our other legend here with us is from Corona Del Mar, Steve Conti. I started with him. Why don't you tell us your history of volleyball?
Mine started on the blacktop at T-Winkle.
I love it.
I was a basketball player, and like most kids, they tend to gravitate to something that their friends are doing, so I went out for volleyball. we won an 8th grade championship, I remember, and getting to play against Lincoln, who had a gym, and Kaiser had a gym back in the day. The
Yep.
finals were at Lincoln. I still remember it like it was yesterday, but that was a great experience. A local mom in our community, Mrs. Crandall, was our coach.
Right.
But she had a guy, Bill Mateus, who played at Estancia and went on to play at UC Santa Barbara, would come in and help us out. But he was a guy that you just kind of looked at in awe. And
He handled himself that way.
he had a certain presence about him everywhere he went.
Yep.
And so from there, I still played basketball my freshman year. And our high school coach at the time, Mike Pomeroy, didn't know at the time, but legendary coach and had something real special going on in Estancia, did something unique. And I think one of the reasons why we were good at that time is we used to get up at 6 in the morning and we'd practice during zero period. I remember riding my bike up the hill on foggy days with John Wallace and Scott Garman and the rest of the freshman guys and our freshman coach that year. There was only JV and varsity. I played JV. Was a guy, Bill Covington, another legend of that era. And I didn't know at the time, but what he did is he made all of us really fall in love with the sport. And from there, just things kind of progressed. Mike Pomeroy, even after being a teacher of 20-something years, was actually laid off my senior year. And then it was, in some ways, it was a blessing. One of Dan's good friend, Tom Pest-Lacey, comes in, just finished at UH. He came in. We had a really good year. We lost in the CI finals. Both us and Miracosta were undefeated. We lost my junior year in the CI finals to a Laguna Beach team that maybe is considered maybe one of the best high school teams ever with Leif Hansen, Blatton, Adam Johnson. The list just goes on and on. Fortune, George Carey, Steve Blue.
Yep.
I can almost name that starting lineup. So, and I didn't even know what was going on, to be honest with you. I think I was kind of young and immature for my age, and I was just in the moment and just trying to hold on for dear life, so to speak. So I got to play a little bit in the back row my junior year. A special moment was beating Laguna Beach in the finals of the Orange County tournament, and I think at the time they had the national win streak at 69.
I remember that.
And which years later was beaten by a Huntington Beach team with the guy TJ DeFalco. We all know who that is, right? Yeah, he's pretty good. They rattle off like almost double, 120 or something. Yeah. And so from there, I wasn't going to a Division I school for academics or for volleyball, and I was gonna go to OCC, and the program dropped that year. In the history of OCC men's volleyball, the only 2 years they didn't have it was 85 and 86, the 2 years that I was there.
Yeah.
And so I took all my classes at OCC, and about 4 of us Estancia guys all went and played for Albert Kasparian. Albert was close with Dan, Pesto, Rocky. So all those guys are guys that I looked up to. They used to play for this group, Raymond Construction.
Raymond Destruction.
Raymond Destruction. And so I look back now, and I was just so blessed and so fortunate to have so many amazing people in this game around me, and I think some of it was rubbing off when I didn't even know it was rubbing off. And then essentially I got into coaching. I was dating a girl up at UC Santa Barbara, and we went wine tasting, and John Wallace was a good friend. Kenna was dating a girl, Ann Hansen, who was a teacher at the Bishop School, and her JV coach quit. And she's like, "Do you want to coach?" And I said, okay, and I drove back from Santa Barbara in my Volkswagen bus on a Monday, and I took over a team that was 8-0. I didn't really know anything about coaching. I knew a little bit about volleyball, and it ended up spiraling into like a 30-year career.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
It's funny how one little thing. What do you think triggered you to go on and coach so long?
I was thinking of, when I graduated from UCSB, I was thinking about going to law school. And
can you imagine Dan as an attorney? Oh,
I know how to argue.
Yes,
I'd want him to be my attorney.
Yeah, I'd want him to be my attorney too.
But Rocky kind of convinced me to go at Edison, and I helped Rock out at Edison, and that started it. And I knew, I always loved going to school and loved learning, and so that kind of led my way to get my teaching credential at UCI, and it started there. I did my student teaching at uni. coached with Rocky for a year, another year at Edison, and then he got the Huntington job. I became the head coach at Huntington for 2 years.
Head coach at Edison.
I'm sorry, at Edison. Yeah. Had 2 fantastic teams.
Yeah.
And then a job opened up at Newport Harbor.
Who were some of the guys on your first teams at Edison?
Steve Titus, Danny Hannon, who ended up playing at Stanford, Eddie Rapp, who's still one of my best friends and coaches at Fullerton College now.
Yep.
Steve Smith. There were some really, really good, just very good athletes. And parents knew nothing about volleyball, and we started winning, and everybody thought I was the greatest. But it was just really, it was a great situation for me. And then I was a resident sub at Edison High School, so I knew basically every student on that campus because I did all sorts of classes and just got to know everybody and really enjoyed it. But then there was a job opening at Newport, which really hadn't happened in a long time in the social science department, and I was lucky enough to be hired there and became the boys and girls coach there.
Your first 2 seasons, you won CIF and the boys and girls.
Yeah, that was talent.
You probably thought, this is easy. I'll
Those
just win
were
every
some
year.
very, very talented teams. And I really hadn't coached girls that much, but that girls team was so talented that I was just like, well, it's just volleyball. We're doing the same thing I do with the guys and all of that. And there are some differences and stuff like that. I think coaching the girls made me a much better boys coach, and coaching the boys made me a much better girls coach.
Yeah.
So
Jenny Evans was pretty good.
Jenny Evans was very, very
He
good.
went on to play at UCLA, national team, AVP. And then with the boys, you had this guy, Hugh Foster. He was pretty good too.
Yeah, which 4 years, never lost a match in high school. 3
Yeah.
years at Punahou High School in Hawaii, and then 1 year at Newport Harbor.
Yep.
So yeah, both of those two made me a really good coach.
What do you think what was your transition into Corona Del Mar? I know it's kind of an interesting one also.
Well, so like I said, I started coaching at the Bishop School in La Jolla, kind of compared to a Sage Hill, kind of a small private school, but very academic, lower division. And after a half a year as the JV coach and a full year, Ann Hansen decided she wanted to step away, and so I ended up getting the head job. I think I was 23 at the time, and I had some talented kids in there. A girl, Allison Newell, Pete Newell was her grandfather.
Oh.
So I had some basketball kids, I had some volleyball kids, and back then I think I maybe had one girl that was playing club. And we made a run. At the time, Francis Parker was very, very good. They were coming off winning 3 state championships. I was coaching against a guy, Rod Wild, these guys that I had looked up to, and the next thing you know, I'm like barely shaving and I'm coaching against them. But we had actually made a run my second year. I think we got third in league, but we made a run and we had beat Francis Parker in the semifinals. I think it was the first time, and I didn't realize what a big deal it was. But we ended up losing in the finals, and I had every kid coming back. We made it to the finals again and lost. I was pretty good at that. I did it my junior and senior year, and 2 years playing for Alberta Golden West too. But it was nice getting there, and that's one of the things that definitely kept me pretty driven. Getting so close so many times and wanting to have that taste in your mouth. And I attribute that to a lot of the guys I grew up with.
Yeah.
The older guys my age, I was always maybe more the average athlete, and I always seemed to look up to a lot of my peers more than looked up at myself a little bit.
Even that Estancia team your senior year, there wasn't anybody taller than 5'11"?
No, we were 3 and 18 in warm-ups probably, if you measured warm-ups. But when it came time to playing volleyball, there was something unique about us. We could all pass, we could all serve, we could play defense. We just didn't make many mistakes, and we were a very good team, But if you looked at us walking in, you'd probably be laughing a little bit.
Well, that CIF finals at Miracosta, which I'm glad we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
At Miracosta with all those Miracosta alumni and everybody screaming at you guys, it was quite an adventure.
Yeah, and we certainly had chances, and there was a little fight at the end of the game actually, and there was no award ceremony. A player off their bench came and was swinging a towel and caught Adam Lockwood in the face, and that's not the guy you want to catch in the face.
No.
Adam was as tough as they come and as athletic as they come, and next thing you know, it was just a melee. And I remember after the match, other kids in our team were kind of saying, they were cussing, they were spitting at us, and to be honest with you, I didn't notice any of that. That's when I realized I think I was just in that uber focused place.
Locked in.
Yeah, and I just didn't even notice it. I was just really in the moment and just trying to do our thing. So again, all those have been incredible memories and have kind of shaped me into the coach and the person that I am today a little bit.
Well, you were at Ensign Junior High.
Correct. So to go back, so I was the head boys and girls coach at Foothill. I student taught in health science and PE there. My master teacher, Dave Simcox, was actually moving in from health into bio to give me a spot. And I went on a surf trip, and I came home. There was a message from the athletic director, Jerry Whitaker, and he said, "Call me." And I could already tell in his voice, like, this teaching job fell through. It's exactly what happened. They were overstaffed in health teachers at Tustin, so they had to send a senior teacher from Tustin over to Foothill to take that spot. In the meantime, I had interviewed for the CDM boys job, and Jerry Jelnick called me, and when he called to say, "Hey, we wanted you to come in for a second, but where there's no teaching job, they said they have one for you over there." And I said, "Well, actually, that fell through." He asked, "Would you consider coming in?" I knew CDM would be a step up as far as an opportunity to be able to coach at a higher level. So I did the second interview. I don't know how I got the job. I'm not sure why, but I'm thankful for Jerry giving me that opportunity. And then I remember Travis Turner even telling me, "Are you sure you want to take this job?" I knew it was a high pressure job, but I did. And on the second day of school, I was subbing at Ensign, and my principal at Tewinkle, Scott Paulson, was the principal there. Larry Hurst actually had hired a basketball coach, and he was teaching bio, and he had quit on the first day of school. And so Scott Paulson asked me what I was doing. I said, "I have a health and PE credential. I'm taking 2 classes at UCI right now. I'll have a bio credential in December." And he goes, "Come and see me." And actually Larry Hurst came in my room and said, "He's going to offer you a job." And I'm like, "What?" And so he came in my room at break, and he talked to me, and he pretty much said, "I want you to take this job." He walked me over. This is weird. Walked me over to the science classroom. You know who was subbing on the second day of school? It was Lance Stewart sitting behind the desk. And I'm like, another volleyball legend, right?
Yeah.
So I make a long story short, I took the job, and so I was teaching at Ensign for my first 11 years, and there'd be sometimes if we lost the Battle of the Bay, I would come in and it would say Sea Queens on my whiteboard and stuff like that. But it was in a good way, like friendly banter. I think I heard stories about someone like getting their hubcap stolen one time or something like that. But that's another side story,
I called
right?
Dan the next morning. I go, "I lost my hubcaps." Half hour later, "Come pick them up. We got them."
It reminds me of a Brady Bunch episode where they're like stealing the goat, the mascot or something.
Yeah.
So it was all in good fun. And I look back now, and that was my golden era of coaching. One, because everything was so new. I was so young. Obviously, the guys on my left and right were guys I was calling at least once a week. I used to call Judy, and Judy would patch me through to Dan's classroom. Yeah. I'd be talking to you often. I cared so much. I was smart to know where to go to help me with my learning curve and to help give me some direction and guidance.
You hit a key word for both of you guys, and that's care. I know you guys really, really well, and I know how much you care about your student athletes. And I wonder, Dan, who are some of your coaching mentors along the way in your 45 years of doing this?
A lot of years. Well, a lot of the guys I played with.
Yeah.
So that we talked about that Raymond construction team and all of that. There's, I've just had that attitude in life where you can learn from anybody. Yeah. And, obviously I admired how competitive you were able to get your teams, and that was one of the things I really respected out of you. Is many other things also, but how to get the most out of your athletes. Steve was so organized. His teams were always disciplined. They always showed class. Obviously, Pesto and his success, I had the opportunity to coach with him, and then he went on to Irvine Valley College and did so well. Albert, who was one of my former roommates, won 10 national state championships, 13.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Rocky, who I played with all my years growing up, had the opportunity to coach with him when I first started coaching. and then had the opportunity to, when his last years of coaching was, we took a group at Newport Harbor who, I think his first year we were probably, I'm guessing, but probably about 5 and 15 or 16. And his last year, that 4-year plan, or it was actually his 5th year, we were state champion, or CIF champions.
Yeah.
So, and just take the opportunity to go through that with one of your best friends and see that. But
You run across those guys in life that are bigger than life when you meet them, and that's what Rocky was. He was just so, you were in awe of everything he was doing. And his jokes were funnier, his wisdom was wiser, everything was, he was a bigger than life man.
yeah,
We all miss.
And the thing is, he had a heart of gold. He had a heart of gold, and if you were in his friendship group, he treated you with just, there's just so many good times.
Yeah.
And it was good. The other day I went to Huntington, and they had the matches for him, and Craig's done a really good job with that, and we do something at the All-Star game. So he's definitely missed, but he's also remembered, and that's the unique thing about this sport is there's a lot of there was just so much growth in this area, but people don't forget those people who had such an
They
impact.
won't forget him.
Yeah.
How about you, Steve? Name some coaching mentors.
First, I have to probably start off with my mom and dad.
I love
You
it.
know,
Yeah. By the way, Dan's mom and dad were pretty good mentors too.
well, they were amazing, and they would take road trips up to the Santa Barbara tournament and
To Hawaii. They'd
and
go.
to Hawaii, and
Yeah.
to be honest with you, I always felt like they supported me in CDM too.
Right.
Not when we were playing each other,
Yeah,
obviously.
Right.
But that's something I learned from Dan as well. But as far as mentors, my mom and dad, huge influence. A lot of my friends I grew up playing sports with, like Bart Conroy, Kirk Stone, played a lot of pickup basketball after college, and we would literally get after it, almost to the point where there would be some altercations, let's just say.
Altercations.
But when we left, it was all good. And certainly the guys I got to be around, playing for Pesto, playing for Albert. In fact, Rocky used to come in the gym and practice with us all the time. And Carlos Brasinia was actually there before he went off to UH. And those guys were on the other side kind of beating us up. And Rocky was like the big brother that would give you kidney punches. But when you needed a sense of confidence, he was the first guy to put his arm around you. So always had a tremendous amount of respect for all those guys, and having a chance to coach against them was certainly really special. Both of you have had a huge impact in my life, and hopefully I've made you both understand how much I appreciate that. And I consider you both really good friends and have known you for a long time, but someone who I really look up to. So again, I've just been fortunate to be around so many amazing people. And then I feel I've had some kids come back and coach for me. I always tell them, like, we're all on the same level here. I know when I was your coach at one point, now we're all equals, we're all coaches. We're all on the same page, and I've had an opportunity to learn from them as well, including some of my players. So like Dan, I always feel there's nobody in the room that I can't learn something from. If there's one little thing that I learn that makes me like 0.5% better as a coach and a person, then I can try to influence our team in a little bit better of a way.
A lot of people don't realize, they'll go, why do you beat that person all the time? Every time you coach against them, you beat them. And I always try to explain, well, I just want to see what they're doing in case I need that quality or that skill or that knowledge to take another group and allow them to be successful.
Right.
And picking everything you can from everybody, which is important. This is a little bit, this is a good one, and we're going to build on it. Explain your coaching style, Coach Glenn.
My coaching style?
Yeah.
To me, it's about teaching. So, you can call it coaching, I call it teaching. And probably my biggest problem that I always created for myself was I like to create a gray area. And by creating a gray area, that means your players are having to make the decision. And, a lot of times they make the wrong decision, and there's a consequence for that. Where if you would have just told them and laid everything out, then they probably wouldn't get into that, make the decision on the wrong way. But what I wanted to do was have them make the decision, and if it's whatever decision they make, if it's the wrong decision, there's a consequence, and then we move on. But that is one of the things why I was able to coach so long, because it was just more about teaching than it was the coaching part.
John Wooden always said, you're a teacher, not a coach.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing how many successful coaches create the gray area. I mean, internationally, you'll see teams that will be playing on an insignificant match, and they'll have a different setter and a different whatever, and if they lose it, it's okay, because they learn from that, become stronger. You see the first string setter when they're playing for the championship.
Yeah.
But they learn in that gray area. So, how about you, Coach Conti?
I'd probably say my coaching style is a little bit of a parenting coaching style, where starts with love and care. I always felt like I knew I would be a hard and demanding coach, but that's why I'd always make sure and attend. Like early in my career, I had a lot of kids that played football and basketball and all these other sports, and I'd always make great effort to go to their matches and make sure, under the circumstances of a big win or a tough loss, to make sure and give them a hug or a fist bump and tell them I was proud of them. And I knew by building that rapport with them, when things would sometimes be hard, it would prevent us from kind of fragmenting apart. And so it started from a place of care and love, and it came from a place of teachable moments. Probably one thing I did is probably talk too much at times, but I just would try to find these teachable moments and try to relate a moment that would take place in the gym that they'd be able to relate when someday they're going to be, a husband, a father running their company, and something like that. So I tried to give these teachable moments, and boy, I'd see some eyes rolling. Some kids, I'd see some nodding at times, but one of the biggest rewards is sometimes being out in the water surfing and seeing someone that I coached 15 years ago, and they're like, "Oh, I get what you were talking about now," and so
it's funny how it takes that time.
Seeing some growth and some appreciation. There's one player in particular, maybe we butted heads, but when I had stepped down, he sent me this a text that was like 3 feet long, and I brought him into my office one day, and I told him, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't care about you.
Right.
And so it gave him an opportunity to kind of self-reflect a little bit, and he sent a really heartwarming text, and so to me, that's what this was about. This wasn't about making money or fame or anything. This is about trying to have an influence on some people and seeing the field plowed at the end of the day, and you don't always feel that way. And sometimes we'd be like, I got all this talent and we're not playing good. What am I doing wrong? Sometimes I'd be questioning myself. But there were certainly some special moments that made me feel like I'd maybe had a little bit of an impact.
By the way, one of your former players who's turned into a really good coach, Blaine Nielsen, will be at UC Irvine on Saturday when UC Santa Barbara plays Irvine at the Brande Center.
I love it.
Yeah, and Blaine's always takes time, sit down, we laugh about the old times.
Yep.
Your name comes up a little bit, and he's one of the great ones. It's really interesting. You look at, like Dan and my style coaching, you definitely knew we were coaching.
Right.
Sometimes you don't say a word, and you look calm, and then I talk to players, and they go, "Oh, he's mean." I go, "It sure doesn't look that way."
Well, I always kind of had a little bit of the philosophy where the game was their time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say practice was my time, but it was our time to have the influence on them to where they can go out and then focus on the game. And there was a little bit of method by madness. I knew if I made practice and some things so difficult in regards to our training regimen, and so there would be some days we'd do certain things that were almost unachievable as far as a drill or for them to get out of it. I knew it would give them a certain amount of poise and comfort, and there would never be a moment that would be too big for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons that we had the success that we did. And I don't know where I learned the saying, but we kind of had a saying like the best memories are made in May. Like we would sometimes lose in February and March and April, and I would just keep on, plugging away, and the hope was when we got to that playoff time, we were able to make a run and deal with whatever adversity came your way, whether it be I've had guys ineligible, injuries. You're dealing with all these different things and having to shift things around. But like people would step up and be able to do their job, and I was always grateful for that.
I remember one of my early coaching days when I was coaching the girls in the club, and we played this Christmas tournament. And, so you practice for, a week and a half, and then you come out and you think you're going to play just like you will, and we would not be successful. And I'd be all down. And my friend Albert Gasparian, who has, he'll let you know, has a wealth of knowledge, but would always say this is not the one that counts. The one that counts is in June at Junior Olympics. And I always remember that, and I've tried to spread that. You teach for the end, and all these other ways are just part of the process. Let's go to how have you adapted your coaching style over the years? Because obviously situations change, your approach changed. You become more knowledgeable about different ways to connect and do things. There are lots of different things, and just wondering what you think about different things you've changed as the years have gone.
Yeah, I just think that, society has changed. And at what you're able to do as a coach is a little different. And my goal has always been, I want to get the same result, but I just have to change the way I deliver the message. And so, one of the things I always reminded myself teaching in the classroom for 35 years, I said, well, and I have a group of seniors that walk in that very first day to my econ class. And I remind myself that the only thing that's changed is I'm a year older. They're still 17 or 18. So the kids are kids, and society has changed around them, so everybody goes, well, the kids are a lot different and all of that. But society has changed. The kids are kids, and that's their first day of their senior year, and so they'll never have that again. And so, it kind of fired me up to make an impact in the classroom on that and realize how special that day was. And so, things have changed. And I tell the coaches that I work with now and stuff like that, it's like we tried to figure out how to get these kids to compete, but using different methods than I used in the past, where it might be trying to figure out what buttons to push. Because there are buttons to push, they're just different buttons that I used to use.
That's a great point about you're a year older and they're still 17.
Yeah.
That's really a good way to think about it. How about you, Steve?
I definitely think over time I matured, and I probably one of the things that I probably added late in my career is a competitive cauldron, something visual. I think today's learner is a little bit more visual, so it was something I had a board made. It took a lot of time to prep and plan practice to make sure things were equal, to make sure everyone was having equal shots during these points. And what we would do is I had a unique shirt made. I'm not a big black shirt guy, but I had a black shirt made with gold letters, and we had some certain symbols on there that had represented some of the success that had taken place in our program. There would be a weekly winner, and at the end of the season, there would be an ultimate winner, and I would have a little plaque put on there, and that would be one of the awards I'd give at the banquet. I was never a big MVP guy or something like that, but to show someone that grinded over the course of the season to achieve that and was competitive every single day, was something I think kind of added a uniqueness to our program, like the last 6 years I was coaching there.
It does take a lot of work. The cauldron philosophy is a big philosophy in coaching, but it takes a lot of work way before you get in the gym.
Most of it was done before you got in the gym,
Right.
because it was how we're even separating and making things equal, you know what I mean?
fair,
Or if it's A versus B, like how we differentiate the points to make that equal as well. And there'd be times where I would have a player sick in the last week of the season. We got a big match coming up, and I'm almost thinking maybe taking the day off, but the kid's not wanting to miss because he's that competitive. And so I like that, though, right? You got to like someone who's pushing. Sometimes I had to make an executive decision and say it was in the best interest of the team for you to not. But that wasn't, not too many cases like that.
Right.
Not too many cases like that. If they felt they're good to go. One of the other things I learned how to trust and rely on my players rather than just rely on myself and my assistant coaches.
Right.
Trust their opinion. When you have a strong relationship, that's what builds some trust. And so I can trust what they were telling me, because at the end of the day, I think we do some goal writing. All of our goals are pretty much, I bet if we compared them, we're pretty similar.
It's interesting, in the college game now, they have the challenge. And, I know I probably would have stood up and just thought, oh, I'll challenge this. Well, now you see a lot of coaches look at their players and say, do I do it or not? And they only mess up once or twice before they become very honest about what they suggest. The other thing in this day and age, there are so many coaches my age that are just want out because of NIL and because of the portal. And, now you don't take a project who's a freshman and develop them by the time they're a junior and then lose them because someone's going to pay them $100,000 instead of, it's a whole different world. And they're Mary Wise, John Cook, all these coaches that have gotten out, Saban in football, just because it's changed from the wholesomeness of high school to a whole different thing.
But if you look at the NCAA basketball game on Saturday, you had one of the youngest coaches in the NCAA versus the oldest. I think he's the oldest.
Yeah.
So so it's that thing again, is, are you able to adapt? Things have changed. Are you able to adapt? And for coaching as long as we have, he's still coaching golf and having some of the problems that we've had before. You just have to constantly adapt, and it is an interesting time though with all that.
It's a different adaptation than you've had to do with anything else.
Oh,
though.
100%. Yeah.
Speaking of coaching, you're still coaching, Dan, even though you've retired from teaching and you're coaching a lot of club, but you're doing something that's really outstanding in the volleyball world, is the beach volleyball game, the doubles and beach in each school now. You coach Newport's girls team and boys team. You've brought the Sunset League in. They all have teams, have this great competition that keeps you busy. It's kind of a labor of love. I know it's not making a lot of money, but it's really great for the game. Tell us about your beach program.
Well, I grew up playing on the beach with a lot of the guys that I mentioned before. And it's something that we've always done at Newport. And obviously we have a very, very good history with some of the people that we've had that have played. And but it was probably 30 years ago that when there was a guy, Terry Sheward, who had some connections with the city, and we dug a big fat hole right next to the football stadium and brought in a bunch of sand from river jetties, which was not legal for
all
sure.
All illegal, yeah. All against the law.
So we've always had a sand court there, and I've always just taken the teams out, and we've done stuff on the beach, and I've did some classes through the city, so I've always kind of been involved in that. I really enjoy the girls has grown. It's a CIF sport now. The boys has not. It's still growing. We had 18 teams in our league this year, and it's actually the kids are so busy nowadays that actually we've been able to make it I think it's a 9-week season, or probably 10-week season, so we can get it in, and it's grown every year on that. But it's the sport is growing, and it's pretty exciting. It'll be in the Olympics, and they were just saying that they're not going to be playing at the Santa Monica Pier, so Huntington is probably the front runner to have
which will be great.
The 28 games.
Great for everybody down here.
Absolutely.
I wonder if we'll get to be to work at the Olympics
Yes.
like we did in *84.
'84.
That was fun. So you were just a kid.
I didn't have my work permit.
I had something else I wanted. In your coaching, give me some of your greatest moments. Let's start with you, Steve. Your greatest memories in coaching high school volleyball.
Certainly the younger me would say winning a CIF championship. But I'd say it's shortly after that moment, it's seeing your team celebrate. It's being able to take a step back, seeing your team celebrate, having your wife and kids come down, hug you on the court, all that time that you spent away from your family made me emotional a little bit.
Yep.
And so, yeah, there's some special victories, but certainly it's about being with those people that have backed you along the way.
Right.
I think that made it really, really special. And certainly some of those moments I remember just being able to have my son on the court with me in the team picture.
Yeah.
Still being able to look back and reflect on that.
Very cool.
Definitely is super special.
Yep. How about you, Dan?
I remember a lot of the losses, unfortunately.
And that might be what made you so good.
Yeah, but there were some real good victories. I mean, that epic battle that we had in the CIF finals in '87 on the girls' side.
Yep.
And we snuck that thing out. I don't know how.
But 87, we're at Marina High School, place is packed, painted faces, drums are going, it's 5 games. Marlowe and Sunderland are doing the game for prime ticket.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty special. I remember Steve Timmons, and he was married to Jeannie Buss there, came down after the game and goes, she says, I want to do this every night, every Friday night at the Forum. I'm going, you don't understand. This is the culmination of a lot of stuff one night.
And then that same year on the boys' side, because I said earlier about my talent and the talent that I had at the high school, we were undefeated going to the CIF finals, and everybody was saying we were the #1 team in CIF, and I went and watched Miracosta play earlier in the season, and I watched them. And they had 3 Olympians on that team that were going to be Olympians, and they were phenomenal. We ended up playing them in the finals, but I was just shocked because everyone's talking about us. I'm like, what about this team?
Yeah, really.
This is the best high school team I've seen. Yeah. And we ended up coming back and winning that, and that was kind of a classic battle. We obviously had some super matches. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times on the boys' side, on the girls' side, and it was kind of like each team would go on a run where for a number of years, one team would have the other, and then the other team would, so it kind of balanced out. I mean, over the years, it was probably 500. On the girls' side, we talked earlier about Lance Stewart, and when he was coaching at Corona, and I still remember the year when Misty and those guys were all juniors. And we won the city championship that year. We won the Sunset League. We won the city championship. We beat Corona both times. And then CIF finals, we lost to them in 5. And then we made it all the way back to state finals, lost to them again in 5. So I always brag that year we were the city champions. And they were
but not the CIF, not the state champions.
They were the state champs.
Yeah. That's, I had one of those too when I was at CDM. We lost to Newport in 5 twice. And ended up winning the state championship.
I remember, on that.
Same thing, kind of like, you couldn't win the little city, but we got the whole big show.
Yeah.
So, what other? Oh, I know. I was going to talk about coaching, and you're doing the beach. You've gone on to coach surfing, which was a love of
definitely a passion of mine.
Yep,
still is.
And now you're the golf coach. Interesting.
Yeah. So when I walked away from coaching volleyball, I certainly had some time, and I have a lot of friends that golf, so it was an opportunity for me to go and spend some time with my friends. Was not very good at it, but I think the school found out that I had been playing and found a little passion for golf. And I want to say coaching golf is very different than coaching volleyball. I've also coached basketball early in my career as well, so I want to say I'm more of a manager. I'm not someone who's working on their grip or their swing and stuff like that. Most of my top kids have someone. So part of my goal is to kind of provide an experience for them. Again, still try to teach some life skills along the way.
Right.
Philosophy is the same. I've got a talented team, so it's no different than what I would do in volleyball. I'm going to seek out the toughest competition. I want to put us through and line us up against the very best. And I know there are some coaches out there that will put together a schedule that will be a winnable schedule. That's not something I've ever looked for. I try to put together a challenging schedule, something that they could look forward to, look back and reflect. Maybe someone they went up against is on the PGA at some point. Certainly that was the case in volleyball. And that's something I certainly learned from Dan, one of many things,
Always, yeah.
including having 2 beach courts built on our campus when I found that out.
That used to be a pool, that.
That used to be a pool, and then with the weightlifting too. That's another thing I think that made our program really, really strong. At the time, I don't know of 2 other programs that would get up at 5:30 in the morning and get in a weight room. And so not only did it make us stronger, but it showed me who was committed and who really wanted it. And there's a lot of things that you got out of that.
There's a bonding thing for your team.
Well, when you go through any kind of struggle and adversity,
Exactly.
getting up for a kid,
Yeah.
and by the way, both of our polo programs are amazing at our school
Yes.
too. And when our kids would complain, I'm like, listen, the polo guys already lifted an hour before this. They're going to swim for an hour and a half, and then they come back for their real practice after. So I don't want to hear anything about it, and that you usually quiet them down pretty quick.
I remember when I was first coaching at Corona, and we get some complaints from the girls or whatever, and I go, look at the boys water polo team. They lose in practice at 6 a.m. and they're running around the school in their Speedos only.
Yep.
I go, you got it easy compared to that.
Yeah,
So
that's for sure.
now for the real question. Not the real question, but a good question. Give me some of your top players, both physically and achievement-wise, who were really made themselves a really good player. Obviously, we talk about Hugh Foster, Jenny Evans, Kevin Hansen, all great ones. But there's a number of them that stand out to you and you. Why don't you start first?
Yeah, so it's hard, and I've been asked this before, and one of the reasons why both our programs had the success that we've certainly had a great canvas to work with. And so to go all the way back, and there's so many things, but like a guy that comes to mind is Kevin and Tom Welch. I bring them up too because this era of volleyball players gone. These guys were both three-sport athletes. One was the quarterback, one was the receiver and safety. They both played basketball. I knew they had some talent, but the way that they came in freshman year, that first trial practice, I'm like, these guys are ready. They're ready.
There were multi-sport athletes, which doesn't happen much anymore. But,
Rare.
Dan talked about his first boys team that won. You had Hugh Foster, John Alstrom, Mike Kirchie. They had a great core, but the guy that was CIF Player of the Year, the setter, Drew Sheward, had also played football and was also the point guard in basketball.
Right.
I look at my '89 team at Corona Del Mar.
Ty Price.
Ty Price, they won CIF in football. He was the quarterback, MVP in CIF, and then we were lucky enough to win CIF in volleyball. He was a setter, and he was MVP. Those type of athletes are really special.
Well, and I think what makes it special, and I had this, but Dan was fortunate to work with Brinkley, Larry Hirsch, the coaches that he worked with too. They each had each other's back.
Yep.
It's not always the case now. Now sometimes there's wrestling for a kid within a school. We're all on the same team has always been my mentality. So certainly I was real fortunate. Paul Orris is incredibly supportive. He would be like, go play volleyball. Paul would even tell him, I'm going to have you all summer. I'll have you all fall. And then we're going to have our season. Go do something else. So Kevin Hansen, outstanding basketball player. Outstanding. Could have gone and played somewhere. He was like a Furbringer,
Yeah.
Could have gone and played somewhere. Obviously, it wouldn't have been a school like Stanford. Kevin made the right choice and went on to become an Olympian. The Welches. Gus Ellis is another one that comes to mind.
He's an achievement guy, though.
Yeah.
Diabetes. He
Yeah.
pushed himself
Kevin
through
Hansen,
that.
too.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing I've noticed when someone has that type of adversity, they go one way or another with it. Either they become super mature because they've had to do some things that their peers have never had done, or they become super crippled because someone has had to do too much for them. So I'll attribute to the parenting that took place with the adversity that they were dealing with that made them the young men that I got to coach. Gus had a child this past year and sent me a nice letter, and he's super thankful. And every time he does that, I'm like, you came to me pretty polished. There wasn't a whole lot of massaging and molding I had to do with a young man like that. Same thing with Kevin. Spencer Haley, like I remember sophomore year, there was a senior in front of him,
That's
slightly
another
smaller.
three-sport athlete.
A three-sport athlete too, right? But what he could do is he could get across the net and block, and he had hands that were like of a cement worker. So, I mean, when the ball hit his hands, it was going down. Phil Bannon's another one. Not a guy that maybe had the most energy in the world, but was so poised and so calm and always made the right decision. And that CIF championship we won in 2005, from a physical standpoint, we were not the most talented team. But we did have some guys that were super competitive, and we had someone with him that went on to eventually become a college All-American.
Yep.
And one of the nicest compliments, I think, when he was at UCSD and they beat UCI is, I heard Spross say, like, Phil kind of did that single-handedly. Sometimes from the service line, sometimes they needed a side out there, go to 6'2" and have him hit.
Yeah.
Like he could barely hit until his maybe halfway through his junior year, but once he did, he figured it
In
out.
Division I college?
In Division
That
I
doesn't
college,
happen.
yeah. So, Sam Stafford and I used to talk about this after 35 years of coaching. Probably the 10 craziest thing, a guy by the name of Kevin Coburn, I probably saw him do about 6 or 7 of them. And that's because his brother and him were both incredibly athletic, but he was tapped with a bit of a wand. The velocity that the ball would come off his arms, it was just ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And he could sometimes look like he was cruising and do these spectacular things, right?
Crack it, yeah.
And what helped is and that's one of the beauty about this sport, is it takes a team. Someone had to pass that ball, someone had to set it and put it in the right spot. That was Patrick Paraga, so he had a chance to play off the same setter for 4 years in high school and 4 years in club as
Yep,
well.
yep.
And so, again, Brandon Browning, who was this 2015? I had the 5 starters on the basketball team were 5 of my 6 starters for volleyball.
Yeah.
And the basketball team made it to the CI finals and qualified for state. So I went to probably the toughest tournament in the nation down in San Diego, having to pull kids off the freshman and JV team to field our roster. But Brandon Browning's one of them who went out there, and you could see he had some special attributes and as regards to just not the physical, but I think the older I got, there's so much of it's mental. How can they manage this game, the stress, the pressure, the me pushing them every day in practice?
Sure.
How would they manage that stuff? And so, again, I could go on and on, but again, that's a short list of a lot of legendary kids I got to coach.
Absolutely. Dan, how about you? You've had a ton of them too.
I'm just thinking of all the kids we used to play that he just mentioned, and that's why we lost a lot of games to Corona. But
Not that many.
well, quite a few. But I was just thinking when you were talking about multi-sport athletes, and I think about our '99 team. We tried Ty Tremblay, and there were 4, Al Lamone, there were Chad Harrelson. There were 4 guys.
Matt.
Yeah,
Jamison.
Matt Jamison. So there's 4 of my starters that were 4 of the varsity starters on basketball. That was a 23-3 team.
Yeah.
And again, I remember Matt missing a big tournament because he was in the Orange County All-Star game for basketball. We had all sorts of kids named Zach Wells, who was one of our best players, who went on to play at UCLA in soccer. I mean, just fantastic athletes on that team. And we were successful and we won. And we were talking about kind of the interesting thing about that. The thing I remember most about that was we won the CIF title, and then we got back on our bus from Newport to Newport, and it was probably 10:30 at night. And we ended up playing, we used to play this 3-on-3 deep court game, and they all wanted to play. That's what we did after we won. So it was.
That's awesome. I never knew that. That's a very
That's
cool
a great
story.
story.
Those guys they love to play. But so that whole group, I think about some of the families, the Caldwells, the Perrines. I mean, number one, tremendous families, multi-sport athletes, and phenomenal volleyball players. So it was, it just, on the boys' side, there's just so many great teams, but a couple of championships, and it wasn't that was disappointing. I just loved how competitive boys volleyball was. And so to win one was really, really hard. And, I got a chance to be, even after I coached them, when I coached with Rocky, we had an opportunity to win again. But it's just one of those paths that's so difficult in this area, and you're playing against the top teams in the nation on that. And then on the girls' side, obviously, kind of the highlight for me is watching the Olympic Games, and you've got April on one side versus Misty on the other for a gold medal. I mean,
You see girls now, a lot of girls have to decide on one sport, and that's all they're doing, which is not good physically, first of all. But they don't realize Misty and April played club indoor volleyball, didn't miss anything for 7 years, and did pretty well on the beach also.
yeah, April 12 varsity letters.
Yep,
Misty, her sophomore year, 3rd in the state in the high jump.
yep.
One of the most amazing things I've ever seen was probably the Masters meet, which I believe it goes CIF then Masters, then State.
Yeah.
So she was in the Masters meet. She'd never cleared 510, and she got in a jump off with a girl, and she cleared it 3 times in a row, and went on to be in the State and got third place.
She probably walked under the bar because she wasn't 5'10".
No, she wasn't.
Yeah.
But I remember her freshman year, and she went and she goes, "Coach, check this out." And she goes up and she does an approach and grabs the rim. And inside I'm going, "Are you kidding right now?" And on the outside I just looked at her and I said, "That's pretty good, but it'd be much better if you could do it 3 times in a row." And then about 4 weeks later, she goes, "Coach, check this out." She goes and touches it, drops off, it touches it again, drops off, and touches it again.
So typical.
That says it all about Misty.
Right there. Okay, real quickly as we finish this thing, list 2 or 3 outstanding assistant coaches you've had that you really that you feel strongly about what they did for your program.
Sam Stanford's got to come at the top just because he's someone I had an opportunity to coach. That's another thing. We talked about the brothers. So he had 2 other brothers, Charlie and Jack, that played for me.
Yeah.
Both of us had a chance to coach a lot of siblings. So knowing that I'd known him since Sam was in diapers when I was coaching Charlie, and Charlie wasn't quite the volleyball player that both Jack and Sam, he just didn't have the same passion, but he was a great member of our program. And to have him take over the program for a little bit and be our head girls coach for a bit and have some success there.
His volleyball mind is outstanding.
Yeah.
He steps ahead of everybody.
And so he, is someone I could put a lot of trust in. When Matt Stavertlik was a freshman, sophomore setter, just to help manage things, we were actually having him call the offense for him a little bit, which in some ways some people could say it could stifle the setter a little bit, prevent them from thinking, but we're also trying to be in the moment and find some success. And certainly Matt became a very accomplished setter and didn't need our help running an offense.
Yes.
But there's certain things that even a senior setter just doesn't see, right? You're not seeing, and I know we had some defensive schemes with our block, whether we're stacking one way or we're just going to leave someone empty and take some chances. We're trying to watch film and do a little bit by feel, some by percentages, but take some risks. And so Sam would be able to just isolate and just look at certain things that would allow us to determine who we'd want to maybe set in some certain rotations. And also we would chart who we were setting to make sure that we weren't repeating, because after I would watch a team play for a while, a ball would be passed in a certain spot, I could almost tell where that setter was going to set it.
Right.
And so we were almost making sure that we weren't being too predictable.
Right.
So he was a huge asset. Josh Coe is another one. I was super fortunate where kind of Travis sent him my way. Someone who I consider a super close, dear friend. He kind of went from being the freshman coach to the JV coach and assisting with the varsity throughout the entire time. And
don't forget Donnie Rafter.
well, I'm gonna get to that too. Although we spent a short couple years together, but so Josh was great, and Josh was able to go out and eventually become the head boys and girls coach at Foothill and have some success. And he's been coaching boys and girls club for a long time. Just a great person, great asset to our program. I certainly have some things that I don't have, and so these other guys kind of fill those gaps in some areas that I don't have, and I think that's essential. I don't want to find someone who's like me. I also want to find someone that doesn't want to agree with me on everything. I want you to come to the table and be honest, and then let's come to an agreement on how we're going to move forward. Maybe it's 10% of what I said, 80% of what you said, 5% of what this coach said. And if it makes the team, the program better, that's what I was always all about.
That's only 95%. You realize that.
Reason why I don't teach math. Donnie Rafter, another one too. Donnie was a guy when I was at Foothill, the head boys coach at Foothill. He was at Tustin with Trent Jackson's brother Curtis and Greg Logan was there, and this
Travis
guy
Turner coached that team.
Travis Turner coached that team. Guy David Lalazarian, who went to Pepperdine to play basketball. They were good. And I didn't realize what I walked into. I guess Foothill had kind of owed Tustin for a few years, and here I come in as the new coach, and I took 3 years of beating in like 1 or 2 matches against those guys. But Donnie was a guy, and obviously played for you, inch for inch, maybe the best volleyball player I know. And I would utilize him in practice, like the way that he could kind of compress on a ball. was just amazing. And he's so modest. I'll be walking through the halls in UCI, and I'll see his picture hung up there, and I'll take a picture. He can't even respond. It's
Yeah.
one of the things I love about him, right? Because he's
Yep.
so good, yet he's just so humble. It's never been about him. So again, these are all guys that I learned from. And Donnie went on to eventually go to Foothill and Woodbridge, and now he's the
Principal.
we both got our master's in administration. He did a lot more with it than I did, but now he's a principal of Beckman, and a guy who I teach with, his wife teaches there, and he's a very well-liked principal.
Yep.
It's not an easy job to do nowadays. So those are three. Kurt Hansen is another one. Clark Broger, earlier in my career, helped me for a few years, who played for you.
Yeah, I love Clark.
Bringing someone like a Brendan Anderson, who after he finished at Pepperdine came back and coached for a couple of years, knowing that they had enough of a positive experience that they wanted to come back and give to the program is a huge reward too. So,
Dan, how about you?
Mike
D'Alessandro?
Mike D'Alessandro would be high on that list. Tom
Yeah.
Pestalozzi.
Yeah.
So, I think the
Sam Stafford?
Sam Stafford, so some of the same guys. But I think one of the reasons for the success I've had in volleyball is I've surrounded myself with very talented coaches to help me out. And whether it's Kurt Lundberg, whether it's Eddie Rapp, just Sasha Kaldemeyer, Russell Gann, I cocked him into 1 year to do it, Rusty Sari. Cody, I still get on the beach a little bit. He's my two assistant coaches are Ryan Wilcox and Cody Caldwell.
Who are playing
and they're-
together.
Well, they've become too successful on the AVP, so I don't really have. I'm coaching by myself, basically. People are like, I can't believe you're coaching by yourself. I go, well, my other coaches have gotten too good. But I just, one of the things like Coach was saying, you're really proud of somebody that, you look at somebody like Eddie. Tom and I were peers, so I don't, or Albert, some of those guys, so I don't really, but Eddie, I had the opportunity to coach, and then he coached with me, and I talked him into coaching. Basically, he wanted no desire to do it, and that he's made a career out of that and on there. But it's just being around, like Steve said, you want somebody that's a little different than you and someone that can relate to your student athletes. Right. And it was always good for me to get maybe somebody with some Newport Harbor ties, because you work so much on those kids about the tradition and the work ethic, and that really, really helps on that.
Yep. Well, gentlemen, I want to say thank you for taking the time. I've been excited about doing this for a long time, because two of the great ones. I hope you enjoyed it. For everybody, this is Sunset Rewind, with a podcast about the two best volleyball coaches in Corona del Mar and Newport Harbor history. Thank you.